We're in a patriarchal society, and all of the systems, especially around money, and financial clarity, and just, sales and how to hustle more, that culture does not support women. And the harder I pushed, the more I went into burnout. The vision of myself when I left corporate, who I thought I was, I was strategic and I was in management and I was making changes, all of that shrunk and went away. I'm in a very male energy field: finance, financial clarity, talking about money, talking about pricing. I'm, you know, but what I've learned is when I've balanced that with my feminine side, and that's when it flows. Positioning is about attracting clients that we're in alignment with, because we're not meant to work with everyone.
Linda, welcome to the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast, the podcast for inspired women to take action, to raise their voice, to say what they want to say, and to really grow in business and entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Laura and Vicki, for having me. I'm super excited to be here and talking to your audience.
Oh, fantastic. So we always start this podcast with a really hard question. So what we're going to ask of you is, if I were to hand you a magic wand today, what change would you make in the world?
Oh, wow. Wow. That is a powerful question. The first thing that comes to mind is I would love to see women in embracing their feminine flow, embracing that feminine energy and operating from that. We are in, we are in a patriarchal society, right? I'm gonna get right into it, ladies. We're in a patriarchal
Let's go. Come on.
we're in a patriarchal society, and all of the systems, especially around money, and financial clarity, and just, sales and how to hustle more, that culture does not support women. And I would love to have a magic wand and just have us embrace our feminine flow, where we are peace, we've got that quiet power, right? And we get a lot done. So I'd love to see that influence all over the world.
Take that magic wand now, lady. Let's do it. Why is that important to you, Linda? Why does this matter to you so much?
I've studied human design personally. I'm not a human design, certified or anything like that. But once I learned I was a projector, it was almost like my life made sense, because I am all of the systems that, you're supposed to hustle more. You need to go network. You need to go, you need to negotiate hard. You need to just pricing and everything. None of that worked for me. And the harder I pushed, the more I went into burnout. And I started my business in 98. And I started one of the first remote accounting businesses that there ever was. So accounting is very patriarchal here in the United States back then. It still is to a degree. But I was still regarded, even though I had a master's degree, and I was pretty high up I was a corporate dropout. I was pretty high up in corporate. I left, and I'm being treated like, oh, this is the bookkeeper. So I had so much to contribute. Yes, I was an executor. And yes, I was able to get things done. But what happened was the vision of myself when I left corporate, who I thought I was, I was strategic and I was in management and I was making changes. All of that shrunk and went away because I didn't have a lot of female examples, right? Because the women that I was being exposed to were a little bit older than me, and they played the patriarchal game. So once I kind of figured out I was a projector, I'm like, oh, I am supposed to rest. I am supposed to be in flow. I am supposed to embrace my feminine energy. And men have it too. It's just a matter of, we've got to learn to balance it, right? They're both good, male energy and female energy. I'm in a very male energy field: finance, financial clarity, talking about money, talking about pricing. But what I've learned is when I've balanced that with my feminine side, and that's when it flows. And because I struggled so deeply, which, if you want to hear about it, I'll share with you. But I want to help other women not do that. And that is why it's so important to me.
Yeah, I'm willing to get into that struggle conversation if you are.
Sure.
'Cause I think it's
So
relatable. I think
it,
it's super relatable for most women.
yeah. So, like I said, I lost my identity, right? I lost my identity. And so here I am, I'm trying to start this accounting services business, and I really wanted to do it with a colleague of mine. So I was more on the accounting bookkeeping side, and she was, tax, and her husband was a CPA. So we kind of thought, great, they'll refer us business, we'll get set up. This will be wonderful. We're great friends. And what happened was, um, being a very naive entrepreneur at the time, right? I wasn't pricing things correctly. When we were getting business, we were basically paying the client to work for them because we were taking on you're resonating. We were taking on the business. And when you do that, right, when you compromise on that, you're attracting clients who are not in alignment with your own values. So then you secretly start to resent your business. So I'll segue back to the partnership didn't end up working because what ended up happening is my friend's husband really didn't want her to be in the business. So instead of them having that conversation, which, she and I dissected this years and years and years later, um, he was influencing to create a rift between us. And we ended up not being friends for a bit. And I would say we're probably never back to where we were, but that really, I felt alone, right? So here I am thinking I'm going to have my friend, and we're going to get through this together, and we're going to build each other up, and we're going to build this great business. And so I mourned that, right? And then at the same time, this other part's going on where I'm trying to get business and I'm trying to build the business, and I'm basically charging by the hour, right? So I'm trading dollars for hours, right? Again, back to that patriarchal society. When we work in corporate, when we go get a job, the first thing that we do is we basically are learning skills, right? And I think it's super important that everyone has a job where maybe they're in service and they're doing things for other people, but you're getting paid by the hour because you're gaining skill. So you're trading dollars for hours. And what I didn't recognize is that, yes, I was offering bookkeeping, but I was building back end of the systems. I was rebuilding pricing for, I was working with this shared limo ride, which was very novel at the time, right? I'm redoing their pricing. I'm figuring out that their systems don't talk to each other, and I'm finding revenue and I'm finding all these things. And yet I'm the bookkeeper. So I had this very distorted image of who I was and undervaluing my self-worth. So all of that kind of really affected me. And I think a lot of women, especially when we go into service, it's very personal. It's very hard to separate who you are from what you're doing. And if I could leave this nugget with anyone, your self-worth has nothing to do with the service you provide. You are amazing the way you are, and that your service is a transformation that you are providing to your client. So it is your ability, it is your gift, it is your skill that is able to do that. And there's value, and that value is outside of you, and that value should be paid for. So very long,
Yeah.
long-winded way.
So important to talk about this. And I think a lot of it has to do with positioning. Did you find that it's like when you position yourself differently, you're able to change your pricing strategy? And that's where you start to build your own self worth and confidence too. Because often we position ourselves, like you're saying, like a bookkeeper versus a business owner. I did that too. I positioned myself as a freelancer until I positioned myself as a business owner. I didn't even take my own self seriously enough.
I totally hear what you're saying, because yes, I completely agree with that, Laura, because positioning it, but it starts with how you see yourself, right? Like when you started seeing yourself as a business owner, the interesting thing for me was I did see myself inside as a business owner. And I think a lot of us do. And then it's like, well, how do I reconcile that with the world? How do I suddenly become this, unicorn, right? Because especially in my family and in my social circle, I was the only one who said, "Nope, corporate's not for me. I'm jumping ship." So I was this unicorn that nobody quite knew what to do with, right? But you're absolutely right. It's positioning. It is, and then it's being able to back that positioning up with a clarity of process, right?
Mm.
Because I find that pricing conversations, what makes them easier is when you go in and you say, "Hey, okay, so you need X, Y, and Z. This is our process and how we're going to get you there. And the investment is," right? But if you talk them through the process, you get people, you get their buy-in, you get them on board, and you're also aligning, right, with that customer, because positioning, I think another, you hinted at this, a positioning is about attracting clients that we're in alignment with, because we're not meant to work with everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. Such an important point.
Yeah. I just can't help but think that all of these threads of what we're putting on the table here are what weave into the tapestry of a personal brand. And this is a space that we talk into quite a lot. I mean, this is really our reason for being, is to help women build, develop, understand their personal brand, find their own identity, see their greatness, and then show their greatness to the world in whichever way that ends up being. And you're talking about identity, Linda, and you've shared about self-worth, and these are all such legitimate and everyday issues faced by entrepreneurs, particularly women. So can we get into this conversation about the perfect pricing formula that you've created, which ties in nicely to what you just shared, is that nugget of create an offer, create a product out of your service so that you can speak to it partly separate from yourself, right? So that it doesn't feel quite as personal. And also because it productizes it. It's here, this is your path to transformation. This is how we solve your issues. So talk to us about your perfect pricing formula. How does this work? We want to know.
So
Yeah.
I hinted at earlier in the conversation that I realized I was paying people to do work for them, right? For a variety of reasons, meaning like I was providing more value, all this other stuff. So I'm like, I was at a point where I was working all the time. My bank account didn't reflect that. And I couldn't pay my bills, right? I didn't have enough cash coming in. So some months it was there, some months it wasn't. So I finally sat down, gave myself, I actually blocked off 3 days on my calendar, which I was like, I must be crazy to do this, but I needed to do it. And I started journaling, and that's how the perfect pricing formula came out. But what the perfect pricing formula is your minimum aligned price. And your minimum aligned price is the baseline rate that you need to be charging in order to sustain your life and your business. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to get to that, because it is such a simple formula. I do have a free training on my website if anyone wants to go and take this. It is like literally a 10-minute video that will transform your life. But basically, it is your desired salary plus your business expenses divided by your available billable hours. Okay. And there is the key. So often, what many entrepreneurs miss, especially as service providers, is when we go to work in corporate, there's 2,080 hours, right? That's what we get paid for. But that includes vacation, that includes sick time, that includes holidays. So what we want to do as a service provider is we want to start with that number of hours, right? If you're full time, and you're going to subtract out how much time you want to take off, how much sick time you want, how much holidays you want. And then that becomes the number of hours that you're available to work, not the number of hours that you're billable. Okay. Because as service providers, yes, we're going to have a product, right? But I'm just talking about the rate, right? Because most service providers are providing a service and they also have a product. So we're talking about the labor side, right? The time part we're showing up. So let's just, for simplicity's sake, say that that ends up being 1,000 hours a year. Out of those 1,000 hours, you want to apply a factor that says, okay, 20% of the time I'm not billable because I'm thinking strategy, I'm answering emails, I'm putting together proposals, I'm on podcasts, I'm doing things to help my business, but I'm also thinking strategically about my clients. I'm doing things behind the scenes. So when we go back to that formula of your desired salary plus your business expenses, I'm going to divide that by 800 hours. And that is your floor price. So let's just say it ends up, and it usually ends up not being an astronomical number, but that, let's just say it's $90 or $100 an hour. That $100 an hour is the floor. If you're charging below that, you are creating a business that can't sustain you, and you're on the treadmill for burnout. Now, I do teach, and we can talk about, you want to leverage from there, right? That's what you need as a minimum. That is not what you're going to charge, because now we've got to add the value. Now we've got to add the product. Now we've got to add the other things that make you you and make your transformation unique. But that is where we all start. And what I love about that formula is it's so adaptable, because it can work for full-time people, part-time people. If you decide next quarter you need to go on sabbatical, you can adjust this rate and your prices to meet your life. And that's why I love it. So that is why I call it the perfect pricing formula, because it creates space on your calendar so that you don't hustle, so that you're making the amount of money you want without the hustle, I should say.
Where were you like 10 years ago when I desperately needed this advice? Actually, to be fair, still need this advice, because that is an amazing way to break down like how to like create the type of business and lifestyle that's sustainable for you. We forget that part. We do get stuck in hustle. We do get stuck in all the stress, and so many women we've talked to burn out, or or they delay becoming entrepreneurs because they have the fear of not being able to figure this out.
Yes. And that is a huge step. I don't know if either one of you are in corporate, but you have to get over the fact that you're not getting that paycheck, right? And once you get over that, it is so liberating. And I'm not going to say to you, like I shared with everyone early on, like I got over that. And yet I went to a situation where I didn't have a steady paycheck for a number of years. And it can be nerve-wracking. And then that's why I also talk about the nervous system, right? Because we have to regulate it in our bodies in order for it to flow. But yeah, I agree with you. Pricing is tricky. Pricing is so many people default to, well, this is what other people in my industry are doing. Well, great. But that doesn't work for you, especially the bookkeeping industry. Like I have worked with bookkeepers to teach them the business behind bookkeeping. And they'll go to me, well, I do it by number of transactions. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't pay yourself. So that's not working, and you have to bring on 50 clients in order to, so this is just one part of the pie, right? So now we want to design, offers off of that. So, but that's your baseline. That's your starting point. And we can design offers in so many different ways from that.
I'm really excited about the conversation, and that you have a book coming out.
I do have a book coming out. This book is called The Money Conversation, and it is all about how to get paid what you're worth. You're setting the standard, you're speaking the truth, and you're getting paid without apology. It is actionable. In the book, I talk about nervous system, what limiting belief we're dealing with, and real scripts on how you can implement this, because I am a huge believer in, you can strengthen your nervous system, right? We can feel safe in our body. Because I know for me, like when I used to say my rate, once I finally started getting my rate up there, right, I would say it and my voice would crack. I would have that wobble, right? And people sometimes, depending on who you were talking with, they would catch that. And then they felt a door open, right? And they would try to negotiate you, or they would press you for more and all this other stuff. So what I figured out after I came up with MAP, right, a couple years, maybe 2 years after this, I figured out, oh, if I gave myself the words to say, right? If I created a script that I could fall back on, I'm going to gain confidence. So that's what the money conversation is about. It's basically creating the container to help you have hard money conversations become easier. Yeah. It's been in my head for 15 years, this book, and I'm super excited it's coming out. I really am.
Congratulations. That's a big
Thank
deal. It's a
It is a
really
big
big
deal. Thank
deal.
you very
Yeah.
much. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you do any speaking around that as well?
Yes, I'm starting to, because we are coming out in early spring this year. I am starting to do some talks around that, and I also have a series of workshops, 6 workshops that are micro workshops that are going to support support the book. So while the book will talk about raising your rates, and there'll be great information in there, I'm also creating a micro workshop that's, again, 10-15 minutes, that when you walk away from that, you've got more support on implementing that with your nervous system in your body. Because that, for me as a woman, right, no men are teaching you that. Like every mentor I ever had never talked to me about why I felt so nervous and why my voice cracked, or even women coaches, right? They weren't talking about this at the time. And so that's what I needed. That I needed someone to say, you're safe in your body. It is okay to be seen. Because a lot of times we're afraid to talk about the investment. I just had a conversation with someone the other day, very successful event planner. And she said when she started her business, she loved talking about, this is what we're going to do for your event, and da 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 da. And she'd go through all of that. And then she'd have a presentation up on the screen, and the price was there, but she would never say the price. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And she's a very confident woman. She goes, yeah, she goes, they saw it. She goes, I would talk about all the discounts. I would talk about everything else, but not the price. Because she said, my voice would crack. I'd get nervous. And I said, were you worried about what they would think about you? She goes, yes. She goes, I would worry that they would think I was greedy, or that's way too much. And what does that mean about us? So I address a lot of those limiting beliefs in all of my work. It's like, because again, I've lived this. I still live this. I'm not going to lie to you, right? Like, I got an email the other day, a couple months ago, actually now, where a colleague of a colleague is vetting our accounting services for one of their clients, and it said, they kept the bookkeeping in-house because the wife did it. I'm sure it's fine. They wanted to contain costs. And that email triggered me back to my early days when because that was the perception of and again, I was holding myself out as a bookkeeper, right? But nobody wants to pay for this. I developed that story in my head. What I've now learned is you can still be triggered, but it's what you do. And I didn't respond right away. I allowed myself to feel it, tell myself because it's not true. It's not true. If that's true for them, then they're not going to become our client. So when I was ready, I responded via email and I said, that's wonderful. Would love to have a conversation with them. Here's our process in order, to get to a discovery call. Here's our process to figure out how we would work with them. Never heard from them again because they're not aligned. Yeah. And that's okay. And that's absolutely 100% okay. And if we create the space to allow the right clients to come in, they do. They absolutely do.
Yes.
It's
And when you're
so good.
Yeah. Go, Laura.
We like this conversation so much. We both just want to jump in immediately because it's so much about what Vicki and I are passionate about and what we're developing too. And one thing, we teach a lot on marketing, and a really important thing with marketing is creating that magnetic marketing, right? So it's what you attract, also what you repel. So it needs to be both of that so that people are clear if they are a fit or not a fit. Even before you have that discovery call, if you can, send the right people away to move on to the right fit for them, amazing. It saves you time and stress and all of that down the road too. So those are kind of really key principles, and being able to let go those who aren't really, and don't take that on as judgment of me. If they're showing you their value. Their value is not finance first. Their value is something else first. And that's great. But a business owner that says, okay, no, my finances need to be in order first before I can do anything else, that is going to be a fit. So it's finding that alignment is so important to remember. And then it's not about you, right? We often think it's about us. And we think, oh God, we've done something wrong, or we're pricing too high, or we're doing this wrong. But it's often never about that.
And I love that, Laura. And the other thing I've learned throughout the years, and I sense you teach this as well. It's like by making that marketing magnetic or repelling, is you're basically, that's the start of your interviewing of the client that is aligned for you. And once I figured that out, I don't know how I figured that out. I'm going to be honest with you. It was almost like an epiphany, because I can kind of remember the epiphany, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing me. And if this is not a match, it becomes a very difficult client relationship. It really does. It's like, it doesn't, things don't go smoothly. It drains your time, it drains your energy, and that ends up draining your revenue, right? Even though we may not connect those dots. To me, well, I'll say this and then I'll finish the point, but money is replenishable. It's a replenishable asset. Time is not. Time is a finite asset, and we have to be very, very selective with our time. And as I'm getting older, I'm learning that more and more and more, right? And I don't have tolerance for people who say one thing and then their actions show up a different way, right? So we're kind of in the middle of we've been talking with a client, a big consulting, it would be a 3-month consulting job for my company. We went through the proposal in November, followed up in early December. They just got back to us, and now they're on vacation. So I'm like sitting here going, okay, that's very telling to me. It's very telling. I haven't closed the door 100% on the job yet, but I'm close, because this is going to, like, if we start the job, it's supposed to be 3 months. I don't want it being a 6-month job, right? But that's me holding my boundaries. And that is part of, I know it sounds weird, but that's part of pricing, right? It's like we have to, because if I let that boundary slip, my revenue goes, even though it might be say $25,000, I just reduced that because now that project went to 6 months or whatever it is. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into it. So yeah. Yeah. Fun. There's so many layers to this, and marketing is, I'm talking finance, you're talking marketing, but it's all the same and interchangeable. And these are core issues. One of the things I said is I really met myself becoming an entrepreneur. I don't know if I would have had this growth. I probably would have, to a degree, but I think as an entrepreneur, like, whoa, you meet yourself fast.
You meet yourself. I love that expression. And one of the things that Laura and I often say is that being in business for yourself is the greatest personal development journey you can ever choose to be on, because all kinds of things come up, bubble up, things that you would never have had the opportunity to learn about yourself if it wasn't for you being in business, having to make these decisions, having to have these conversations, having to voice the things that we have some timidness, fear, shame sometimes. Money is such a big conversation.
Yes, shame. I mean, shame, guilt, a lot of that. I see that a lot come up around money. Sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed this, but as women, especially service providers, will make a decision on what we think someone else can spend.
Drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. When I'm coaching an entrepreneur and they say, oh, they won't be able to afford it. Who says they can't afford it?
That's not for us to decide. Yeah.
And also, it's about the value. It's not about the money. It's the value. If a person, we all make choices on what we purchase and how we spend our money based on our values. And if we value working with you, we'll pay the world. We'll sell our kid. Not quite, but close.
100%.
Sure.
I always give this example. When I give a live talk, I'll say, okay, who likes coffee? And then, in the room raises their hand. I'm like, who likes cream in their coffee? And then a few few people put their hands down. I'm like, okay, so now let's just say your coffee costs $3. But now because cream has gone up so much, that same $3 cup of coffee now costs $10. How many people would still buy it out? How many people would still buy it out? And you see the hands go down. And I'm like, that illustration right there is exactly what you just said, Vicki. It's like what we value, we will find the money for, right? And now there are some people who literally do not have that kind of choice. We're talking about people who are meeting their basic necessities and then have the choice, right, to buy things, which is a lot of the world, right? And then there's a lot of the world that can't do that. Those are not the folks we're talking about. We're talking about the folks who have money coming in regularly, who can decide what they want to spend money on, right? And then, but the one thing that drives me crazy is another one is, oh, I can't afford. Like they'll say, I can't afford that. Well, if I can't afford that, why would they? Right? And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Why can't you afford that? What's going on there? And then it's about talking about getting to the limiting belief. And oftentimes I'm finding that something happened. We all have had trauma in a varying degrees. Some people have had terrible trauma. Other people have just had emotional experience that I call trauma. And I can tell you that my self-worth, right? I've had wonderful parents and I had a wonderful childhood, but some of my self-worth issues that showed up in my business originated from when I was a child, right? Being seen, being the perfect daughter, doing more, taking on more responsibility, being the people pleaser, all of that played out in my business. And, you know, I've got a couple of journal prompts. If anyone's interested, you can DM me. I will send you those journal prompts because they are not unique to me. But understanding that has not only helped me in my money journey and my own financial clarity journey, it also helps me in every other area of our life. So what we're talking about here is not just marketing or finance or whatever. We're talking about becoming whole and being in our feminine flow.
Healing that generational trauma that's
Yes.
been held over. And, one thing we have talked about recently on this podcast, and one of our guests brought this up, and I think Vicki and I have echoed it over and over, but it's so sit with us, is that girls are taught to be perfect and boys are taught to be brave.
Yes.
That distinction alone speaks so much to how women and men interpret the world differently and start businesses differently,
Yes.
and get stuck in like that imposter syndrome and those limiting
Yes.
beliefs, like you mentioned, because we were taught to be perfect. And when you have that perfection mindset, it holds you back and keeps you in that state of fear that you're going to do something wrong, that you're going to make a mistake. Where boys are jumping off the couches with swords at 5 years old, they don't have that. They're so much braver to take risks.
Sure.
How do women become braver to take risks? Because we know as entrepreneurs, risk taking is a big part of it.
Yeah. And I think that personally, that comes down to, getting out of our minds and sinking back into our bodies and listening to the voice of our hearts. Because I am very, I have a strong masculine, energy, right? I do, because I'm in the accounting field and that's a very masculine, and I'm very strategic, and I really had to balance, right? It was getting rid of the noise. But practices like meditation, movement, any kind of movement, exercise, walking, it's like that helps us sink into our bodies. And to me, it's non-negotiable now. I do a body scan every day. I feel my body and I say, okay, what is feeling, where am I feeling something in my body? Right. So like this morning when I was doing my scan, I was super excited about talking with you ladies. And I felt that right in my solar plexus, in my heart chakra. And I now can distinguish when that fluttering is, the fluttering, I used to always have a signal that I was unsafe. But now, because I've practiced this, you get to feel safe. And it is a practice, right? Even if you can do it for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, any little thing to just drop and go, hey, how am I? Just put your hand over your heart, right? Put your hand over your heart and say, I'm safe, right? Um, it blocks the noise out. It helps you ground, and really, all of this, I found the way to embody it is we have to retrain our nervous system, because our nervous system is on fight or flight. Yeah, fight or flight. And we have to embrace our feminine side is intuitive. Everyone, I know people, a lot of my friends will say to me, I'm not intuitive. I'm like, yes, you are. You're intuitive because your heart knows what's true for you. And if you slow down long enough, you will start to hear your heart. And it doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a little, like, how you get up and you feed the dog or the cat or whatever. Get up and just say to your heart, how are you today? You know, and your heart will start to talk back. Yeah,
Mm.
louder.
I'm loving that. Can you imagine that as a daily practice for every businesswoman, every entrepreneur? Can you imagine what the impact is on not just their business, but the people they work with and then the clients they serve?
Yes, yes, yes.
Mm.
Richard Gere, he was on some interview. I just happened to catch it for 2 seconds, but when he was coming out, it was a live show. I saw him doing this, and he said and it made me stop. And he said, he goes, when I greet people, I say, I wish you happiness. And I thought that's one of his Buddha practices. He went on to explain, but I was like so impacted by that, because he said it just sets the tone. And I'm like, he goes, but I'm really getting it. He goes, it's me. He goes, I'm getting that 1,000-fold. He goes, so I'm selfish. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so not selfish. But I thought that was amazing. I really, so I've been trying to do that. Um, adapt that practice. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I think
breath
in this,
also plays such an important part in this. The breath, we must remind ourselves how to breathe. I mean, we are on autopilot with breathing, and yet are we really breathing? The studies show that we use something like 20% of our lung capacity or less. And because we breathe so shallow all the time, and when we're in
that is so true.
when we have
You just
fear,
made me
we
aware of,
hold
I'm
our
like, I'm
breath.
breathing shallow.
Yeah.
same.
And I think because as you were talking about that pause, and we've talked about the power of the pause and how that quietens the noise on the outside and helps us go within, and the
Yes.
breath creates that pause.
Yes.
And it gives us that instant way of doing what you've just talked about. So if we are going into a presentation or we are about to take a client call and share with them our greatest, latest price, which is more than it ever has been, we can use the breath, and we can go back to what you've just said, Linda, about knowing that we're safe.
Yes. 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 And sometimes it is, you know, the reality. Like, I was working with an entrepreneur, they're changing their business and the revenue's not flowing yet. And I said, yeah, but I go, I didn't go out and call it a void period. I'm like, we're in a transition period, right? So you used to make money this way. Now you're going to make money in a new way, right? It's going to be more teaching and more talking and that kind of thing, which is a very different for them. And she goes, you can see the panic, coming back. And I'm like, okay, so let's break this story down, right? What is true? What's true is you're not making revenue in the new way, right now, but you're opening pathways for it to come in, right? And so sometimes we have to acknowledge what the reality is, because our mind knows, right? And if our mind knows, our body's going to be like, well, wait a minute, that's not true. Like, we couldn't just suddenly say, like, I'm making $10,000, because that was false. So we have to be true with what the reality is, and open, right? Open to possibility, right? And that's really a lot. I talk about that a lot as well. It's, money is available. It circulates all the time. It's available for everyone. Um, and money comes, one of the things I find myself saying a lot to myself, money comes to me easily. Money comes to me easily. And okay. And And then what starts to happen is I believe that, right? So yeah, it's fun.
And then what we focus on is what we get more of. That's
Yes,
scientifically proven as well.
that
These
is
aren't just
correct.
cliches that we're sharing. It is how
Yeah.
life works. It's the science of
Yes.
reality. Yeah.
That's correct. The science of manifesting, right? Because what we focus our attention on. Because if you know, you think about when you want a new car, right? Like say you want a Mercedes Benz, and but you never noticed them before. Now, when you go out, you notice 20 a day, right? It's because it's in your awareness. It's in your awareness. Yeah. And
Mm.
I think for me, and I would love to hear from both of you. I know that when I was early on in this journey and my identity wasn't quite like my identity was skewed, I was also thinking, well, that this doesn't work for me. And this is not possible for me. And I
Mm.
realized I had become this negative person. And I just had to, so my mantra was, and I think I got this out of a book, and I want to say it was Denise Duffield Thomas, who is Australian, right? But I
Mhm.
think she had a mantra that said, my time is now and I'm ready for the next step. And yeah, I'm pretty certain it was her. And whenever I got nervous or scared, I said that. My time is now. I'm ready for the next step. And I think about it like driving a car. When you're driving at night, you have headlights, and your headlights only go out so far. But as you keep driving, you keep seeing the next step and the next step. The road
Mm.
keeps revealing itself to you. So it's kind of that concept. It's like trusting that what you need will show up for you.
Yeah. That's hard. That's so hard, especially in the early stage of the journey when you're still figuring everything out and learning about yourself and dealing with those limiting beliefs. It is so hard to take those steps. And we know the statistics is more entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs in later part of life. It's often most people's second act, like you coming from corporate. So many women start businesses because of life situations, because of burnout from corporate life, because they want something different, they want to change. And very few start like right out the gate. But I feel like there's a shift. I feel like that might be changing. I feel like there's some mindset around the traditional pathway no longer serving most people. And I find that fascinating. And I hope that us older generation, can help inspire our children and the next generation to take more risks, to try things out for themselves, and to figure out different paths that aren't necessarily traditional, because I think life and the world is changing so rapidly right now. There's not going to be a lot of choice. I think we're going to have to make changes. So how do we help open up the mindset now that, they can be braver, they can do more things, try different things out and figure out different paths. What do you foresee? What do you foresee in your industry really happening with this sort of, yeah, the way the world is going?
So one of the things that's happening is AI has kind of been touching the accounting services industry for a while now. And while AI has made great strides and it has made things automated, I think that the folks who are going to survive are the ones who are building more skill and we're adding product, right, to their businesses. They're thinking out of the box. They're not staying stagnant. Um, AI does so much, but there's so much more to financial clarity, right? In a business, there's setting up the processes, there's making sure all the inputs that get into the reporting are accurate. And I've been talking with a lot of bookkeepers. There's also there's a lot of fractional folks out there, CFOs, controllers, all of that stuff. But it's really about if you start to look at the feeders, right? I call it the feeders into like if you're just looking at the data input, yes, you're going to become obsolete, right? Because that's getting automated. But if you look at, well, I could help someone, put financial controls in place, or I can help someone automate, or I can help someone, um, make sure that their system that they're using for their invoicing, all the information is correct. It's about looking at what other problem can you solve? Because AI is solving certain problems, but there's also creating new problems, right? And AI
Mhm.
is not 100% correct. It's not yet anyway. It's not 100% correct. I don't know if it'll ever be, because there is that, I play with AI all the time. And I find that you've got to ask the right questions, right?
Mm.
You have to ask the right questions. It can be very, very helpful, but play with it. Ask the same question 10 different ways and you're going to get 10 different answers. And then you can pick the one that you like. And then AI has been super nice. I don't know about if anybody else has noticed that, but it tells you, rah, rah, it's your cheerleader. And then you might go off down a path and do something. I think it's a great, I think use it as a tool. I think use it as a basis to maybe start some thinking or an idea or something, but then go vet that idea, go talk to people. We are human. We are human, and interaction and relation. And that's the other thing I tell, especially in our, I'm like, we are all about client service. Okay. It is about client communication. Yeah. We might offer accounting services, but we are more about, because when I started my business, my remote accounting business, the internet didn't support that. So I based my success on creating process and communication. And that has been the two cornerstones. So I think that those two are the cornerstones of any service business. And, and that's going to help. I was just going to say, reminds me of, there's this photographer who took my photos recently for my business. And we got to talking and she was saying that, when everyone got a camera, she goes, her business went down. So she had to reinvent herself a little bit. And her whole angle is she brings you out, like the true you, right? And it's true. An iPhone, your daughter taking your picture for your website might be great to get you started, but if you really want those photos that are going to convey, that magnetic or, really show your essence, you're going to want to find a professional, right? But that was interesting. Like even a photographer, they're being touched by AI, right? Or iPhones or whatever we want to call it, or technology rather. And if you can adapt, you're going to be fine. And change, I'm a Taurus, for God's sakes. I don't like change.
Same. I relate.
Don't like change, right? But I find that every day, every day I'm changing. So
Yeah.
embrace the change.
Yeah. Embrace the change. Yes, it's true. I relate completely on that. And one thing we have learned is so much AI and all the great tools that are out there now is really great for entry level. It's really great for the beginning stages. It's really great for those who are budget constrained and all of that. And that's where you should be using them. But at some point, we need to outsource. At some point, as a business founder, we need to outsource. We need to ask for help because we cannot do everything ourselves and scale at the same time, right? And grow and to reach those goals that we want to reach. So there needs to be that awareness too, that's fantastic. And here's the thing, as a service provider, especially, this is what I see the future, my little crystal ball, is we need to raise our profiles, becoming more human, becoming more authentic, becoming who we are and speaking out. I think as women too, it's even more important to raise our voices because then we help raise the next generation to speak, to be brave, to get on stages, to get on podcasts, to write books, to use our voices, to share our knowledge and our opinion, and encourage others to do the same. And that's how we shift from the patriarchy to a more balanced environment that benefits all. Because we're not trying to, raise women up so that we put men down. That's never the goal. Right? I have a son. I want him to be equally powerful and successful and, empathetic and all the things as my daughter, right? I want them both to come up in this type of world, but we need to create the environment that they can do so and they can have this space.
Yes. And make it safe for them to do so, right? Yeah, make it safe for them to do so. I mean, there's still stigma about men who stay home with the children and the women who go back to work, right? There's still stigma around that, which is mind blowing, right? But yeah, no, I love that. I love that. That's fantastic. Yes.
Well, definitely we need more change. We need more financial literacy for women. We've come a long way. We know
Yeah.
that when we look back in history, we've come a long way as women, but there's still so much we need to conquer, especially around limiting beliefs. So this conversation has been fantastic. We need more of this. Excited for your book coming out. Excited for you speaking more on this topic so that more people hear it. So I just want to say, Linda, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a brilliant conversation.
Thank you. I really enjoyed speaking with both of you. Thank you.